Every night hides a story. Some are forgotten, others never end. You thought the dark was empty? Think again. Welcome to Nightling, where the strange, the terrifying, and the unexplainable come alive. Tonight's story will pull you in, twist your thoughts, and leave you looking over your shoulder. So subscribe, settle in, and let's take a walk into the dark together. This was last fall in the first week or two of October. I'm not entirely sure how to start this because it honestly all happened completely out of the blue. It was a normal Monday afternoon. I'd gotten out of work and pulled up to my home just after sunset. And usually I'll park in the garage and head inside from there. But as I pulled in, I noticed something hanging on the front door. So instead, I parked in the driveway and went up there to see what it was. Taped right on the door handle was an envelope. I knew right away it wasn't some random soliciting mail because it had my name handwritten with a pen on the front. Inside was a handwritten letter. It was short, but what it said I found pretty disturbing. Essentially, the person mentioned they'd been interested in me and wanted to meet at a specific place in time the following day. Oddly, that was one of my days off of work, but I figured it was just a coincidence. The writer of the letter didn't sign it though, so I had no idea who it was. Obviously, there was no way I was going to go anywhere and meet with some random person. I headed inside, tore up the letter, and tossed it in the trash. I thought the whole thing was pretty disturbing because they knew my name and my address and said they were interested in me, which is just a strange thing to say given I had no idea who they even were. Anyway, I thought tearing up the letter would help me not to stress about it too much, as there wasn't anything I could do about it, at least not yet. After all, it could have just been some stupid prank. I went on with my night and got in bed just before 11 o'clock. Like I mentioned before, I was off the following day, so I slept in and spent pretty much the entire day inside. Can't even remember what I did all day, but I know I made dinner late, like 8 or 9, and started getting ready for bed right after. I went upstairs and into the bedroom to take a long, relaxing shower. However, a little ways into it, I heard the doorbell ring. Confused who could have been outside my home at this time of night, I opened the shower curtain and listened for a minute, but with nothing else. I figured they left. I wouldn't have answered the door anyway. I closed the curtain and continued with my shower. As I stood in the water and tried to relax, though, I started connecting the dots between the letter from yesterday and the odd doorbell ring. I knew it could have been me completely overthinking it, but also the feeling that I wasn't felt a lot stronger with every minute passing. And then I heard something. It sounded like a few light thuds, or maybe creaks somewhere right outside the shower curtain. I froze and listened, then quickly shut off the shower and moved the curtain aside. Nothing was there. My heart was still racing as I got out, dried off, and got dressed. First thing I knew I had to do was check the front door. I crept downstairs and looked out the peephole, but saw no one standing outside. So I opened the door. Immediately, a paper slip fell from the crease in the door. Before reaching down and grabbing it, I looked around outside. The trees rustling in the wind and the faint hum of cars along the distant Manchester streets were the only sounds. And as far as I could tell, the whole neighborhood was still dark and quiet, eerily so. I picked up the paper and closed the door, then unfolded it. It was a note in the same handwriting as the one from yesterday. As I read it, I could feel my blood rush and my face getting pale. The writer was clearly angry about me missing the meetup earlier today. It was like they really thought I was supposed to show up. And at the end of the letter, they signed their initials this time, DN. This was incredibly creepy and disturbing as it was way more than just a small note. This felt way more personal and unsettling and much less like just some small prank. I genuinely didn't know what to do because he was already gone and I still didn't know who it was. Even with their initials, I had no idea. I paced around the living room for a while, a good 30 minutes at least. Even then, as I paced around in my own home, I kept getting this uneasy feeling that I was being watched. I'd look and check out the windows and the door over and over, but never saw anything. Eventually, I knew I'd have to sleep. Overall, though, I decided that in the morning I would go to the police station in Manchester City Centre and bring in the letter and see what they had to say about it. I started heading upstairs. As I reached the top, I suddenly heard those thumping or creaking sounds. The same ones I'd heard while in a shower, coming from inside the bedroom. I hurried into the room. Nothing. Not a single thing in there to warrant the sounds I'd been hearing. I'll admit, they weren't concerning sounds at all. It was just with everything else going on that it made me feel like everything could be something, even though it likely was nothing at all. I closed and locked my bedroom door, just in case, then checked the closet and every other spot in the room to make me feel better. And just before getting in bed, I remembered one other place. I never went out there, but there was a small balcony attached to this master bedroom. I was a private person and always kept the blinds closed, so I often forgot it was even there. I walked over and pushed aside the first few blinds so I could get to the door handle. I didn't even have to grab it to see that it was already unlocked. There was no way I left it like this. However, I didn't get a chance to open the door because just a second later, a figure moved from the corner of the outside balcony. I jolted my eyes at him, seeing he was staring at me as he moved closer to the other side of the door. I turned and sprinted out of the bedroom. I heard the balcony door open as I was leaving. I ran for the closest neighbor I knew would help me. The man didn't seem to be able to find where I ran off to. Police were in my house and searching around within 10 minutes. I was still incredibly nervous because I knew how awful it'd be if the man got away. And unfortunately, that's exactly what happened. They never found him. Me and a couple officers started going over the time frame of everything taking place, and it's pretty apparent that the man broke in while I was in the shower. Likely, the sounds I'd heard while in there were from him opening and closing the balcony door where he went to hide. So, since I'd heard those same sounds again, he must have at some point gone back inside the house while I was pacing around thinking about the letter, which makes that whole feeling of me being watched even more disturbing. And most of all, what I find really unsettling is that from the short glimpse I got from the man looking at me, I felt like he looked oddly familiar. Not like someone I knew, but maybe just someone I'd seen in passing at some point before. It kills me that I can't figure out where or when I'd seen him. It really could have been anything, like just passing him at a grocery store, which makes it way more disturbing that that was enough to get this man to follow and stalk me and form this dangerous fixation on me. A whole lot more could have happened that night, and all I could be is thankful that I got away mostly unharmed. It's been almost a year, and so far nothing else has come up. No notes, no weird sounds, nothing. I hope it's done, but even now I'm still constantly looking over my shoulder, unsure who's watching. If you came home to find that letter taped to your door, what would you do? Comment your thoughts below. I'm genuinely curious how you'd handle it. If this story sent chills down your spine, hit like and subscribe for more terrifying true stories every week. Turn on notifications so you never miss a night with Nightling, because the next story might be closer to home than you think. I was driving from Manchester all the way down toward the south coast. I had taken a road trip to see a bunch of friends for a wedding and ended up staying for over a week. Because I stayed a little bit longer, I only had 4 days to get back home before my next shift at work. So I was really pushing it with how long I was driving. It was 1 a.m. and my eyes were killing me. It felt like my eyelids weighed 100 pounds. The only caffeine I had was a hot coffee from service station 3 hours back, so not very hot anymore. And I was in the middle of nowhere. It felt like a dead motorway. Nothing on either side of it and barely any cars or lorries around. Just the occasional car speeding past me, only to disappear down the road 30 seconds later. As I tried to keep my eyes open, I noticed again headlights coming up behind me. They weren't very bright, so it must have been a pretty old car without those crazy bright LEDs everyone is nowadays. The car was also going a lot slower than most that passed by. This one took forever to catch up to me. After tailing behind for a minute, it merged into the other lane and started to pass. I kept my eyes on the road, just making sure I stayed in my lane to let them through. But after a while of them not actually passing, I looked to my left to see what they were doing. The car was matching my speed right beside me. Some old, dusty, dark red car, and their window was down. From what I could see, there was just one man in the car driving, obviously, but he was also staring at me. I had my window up still, so I don't know if he actually could see me with it being dark and with the reflections and all, but he was looking in my window as if he could. The man didn't try to hide it either. His light was on inside his car, so I could see him clear as day. He looked red-eyed and kind of drunk just from his expressions and movements, but he remained at the same speed and just stared at me. It really freaked me out. I tried slowing down, but he slowed down too. I slowed down even more, and again, he matched my speed. So then I slowed down an absurd amount, like down to 40 miles per hour on the motorway. And finally, he didn't copy me and just held his pace and kept driving. He disappeared down the road a minute later. I didn't know what the hell to think of that. Maybe he was a creep, maybe drunk, or honestly, maybe both. Only a couple minutes after whatever that was happened, I was back to struggling to stay awake. I knew I needed some caffeine and possibly even some rest for a minute. 15 minutes down the road, I pulled off the motorway and into a really small rest area. It looked like just some bathrooms and a coffee machine. No other cars were there. I parked and got out, walking up to the machine and getting a coffee, hoping it'd be enough. By the time I got it and headed back to my car, another car was pulling in. I instantly saw it was the same old red car from the motorway earlier. How the hell was he pulling up behind me again? I never passed him, at least not knowingly, and there was nowhere else to pull off. He would have had to pull into the grass off the road pretty far out and discreetly wait for me to pass. Otherwise, I'd have seen his car on the side of the road. I got in and looked at my mirrors for a second. He didn't pull in behind me, though. He went right up next to me like he did on the motorway. I could just feel his eyes staring at me. Too much to ignore. I looked over, and sure enough, that's what he was doing. Staring right at me with those red, unsettling eyes. What did this dude want from me? I turned my car on, but the guy started talking. He was yelling something, trying to get my attention through the window. I looked over again, and he reached over and opened his passenger door, motioning for me to get in. With this disturbingly friendly expression on his face, I started to pull away, glancing over one more time and seeing the instant shift into a dead stare. I got back onto the motorway, but the guy followed. He kept trying to do the same thing, where he'd merge into the other lane and match my speed. But this time I wasn't having it. I was getting a little more aggressive, trying to keep him away from me. But he matched my energy, also getting more aggressive. I could have sworn he even tried to clip the back of my car several times, but I braked just quick enough before he could hit me. Eventually, I saw one of those emergency vehicle turnaround spots. A pass-through to get onto the other side of the motorway that went in the opposite direction. In a rather dangerous and illegal split-second decision. I turned onto it before he could even react and follow me. As I safely got onto the other side of the motorway and sped in the other direction, I looked in my mirrors. I felt my heart continue racing for a moment. For a second, his brake lights turned on, but it seemed he gave up. As a moment later, his lights faded out and continued the other way. I was shaking for the next little bit, finding a petrol station and just taking a break for an hour to cool off and to keep distance between me and that guy. During that time, I put in a tip for the police, mainly saying I thought he was just a drunk driver dangerously, but it didn't come up to much of anything. That was until 4 days later, well after I'd made it back home. Having time to actually breathe, I looked up if the police ever caught any drunk drivers on that road recently, thinking I might find the dude's photo or something. But what I found made this whole thing more disturbing than I ever could have imagined. A day before I left Manchester, there had been a disappearance of someone on that very road. They found their car in the grass, and the person was just gone. No traces. The only clue they had was from a different driver on the road, who mentioned they saw a rusty red car driving erratically around the car that was later found abandoned in the grass. Reading the whole case almost felt like déjà vu. It was exactly like what I experienced that night, only I made it out safely. Had things gone any other way, that night could have taken a really disturbing turn, and I likely would have disappeared too. What would you have done if you were in their place that night on the Manchester Road? Comment your thoughts below. I read every single one. Hit like to support the channel and subscribe for more true horror stories every week. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a night with Nightling. This past February, I stayed in a cabin in the Lake District, Cumbria, for a week. It was a winter lodge meant for staying in during the cold season and enjoying the snow-covered scenery out in the hills, which usually wasn't possible in regular three-season cabins. When I arrived, it hadn't snowed yet, but by the time I woke up after my first night, snow had started coming down. It was a lot too, enough to keep me cozied up inside for the whole day. The fireplace and wooden interior gave the place this perfect, rustic feel. I got really tired around 10 p.m. and decided to head to bed, but I had to run out to my car real quick to grab a bag I'd forgotten to bring in yesterday. I threw on my boots and jacket, then opened the door, only to immediately see that the snow on the porch was disturbed, like something had been there. When I stepped out further, I realized they were footprints. I could even see the tread pattern from someone's boots pressed clearly into the snow. I looked to see where they came from, but lost the trail as it led toward the woods. There was no telling how long ago this was, but I'd never heard anyone on the porch. Whoever was hadn't knocked or said a word. I grabbed what I needed from the car and went back inside. Since they hadn't knocked and I hadn't gotten any messages from the cabin rental company, I figured it wasn't anything important. I went to bed and fell asleep. For the next 2 days, things were quiet. I stayed inside by the fire, watching the snow pile up outside. But during those 2 days, several times, I checked outside and saw fresh footprints in the snow again. Always the same pattern, coming up to the porch and then back into the woods. So on the third day, I decided to follow them. I put on a thick coat and trudged into the forest. The older footprints had already been covered by new snowfall, so I walked in the general direction I remembered seeing them go. I only made a little way in before realizing everything looked the same, endless white snow over trees in every direction. With the snow beginning to cover my own tracks, I knew I'd get lost if I went any deeper. From what I saw, there was nothing out there, no paths, roads, or trails. I returned to the cabin and warmed up by the fire. Strangely, after that, no footprints appeared again for the rest of the day. It was like whoever it was knew I'd gone looking for them and decided to stay away. That night, the world outside was silent. The soft whisper of falling snow and the crackle of the fireplace were the only sounds. I hadn't thought about the footprints in hours. I stayed up late, not getting into bed until 1 a.m. I fell asleep quickly with a muffled wind outside. I don't know how long I'd been asleep, maybe a few hours, when I woke up around 3:30 a.m. The wind was still blowing softly against the cabin, but I could hear something else. A crunch, then another. Someone was walking in the snow, very slowly, circling the cabin. If I hadn't known about the footprints already, I might have missed it. That's how faint it was. I sat up listening. For some reason, I wasn't panicking, just alert. I felt confident I could handle myself if something happened. Looking back, that confidence was naive. The crunching moved toward the back of the cabin, near the wall where the fireplace was, then stopped. After a few minutes of silence, I got up. I stepped into the hallway, which was pitch black. No built-in lights, only the faint glow of the fire bleeding around the corner. That's when the false confidence vanished. A sharp unease crept in. Something felt terribly wrong. I slowly walked toward the living area, every board creaking underfoot. Just as I reached the front door, a loud thud echoed from behind me. I spun around, and for a split second, I saw a figure darting through the dark hallway, moving fast toward me. I bolted. I grabbed the car keys I'd left by the door, flung it open, and sprinted barefoot into the snow. I jumped into my car and slammed the door shut. The windshield was completely coated in snow. I couldn't see a thing. I had no idea if he was chasing me or standing right in front of the car. The only clear view I had was through the back window, so I reversed fast, snow spraying everywhere as I tore down the narrow drive. I didn't stop until I reached a small roadside inn nearly half an hour away. It took over an hour for the police to arrive back at the cabin. By then, heavy snow had already buried the footprints. From what they found, the man likely entered through a small window near the fireplace. Piecing everything together, they believed he crept quietly through the cabin, heading for the spare bedroom, the only other one besides mine. If he'd chosen the correct room, I would have been trapped face to face with him. But by leaving when I did, I unknowingly gave myself a chance to escape. It's terrifying how just a few seconds can mean the difference between living through something and not. It's been months now. No sign of him. No strange tracks. No noises in the night. But even now, every time the snow falls, I still find myself checking the porch. What if this happened to you? Would you have stayed calm or run the second you saw those headlights? Tell me what you would have done in the comments. I read every single one. If this story gave you chills, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because on Nightling, the next story might be about you.